I'm the true Lord of Bebbanburg! Stop them!
Since the release of its first season back in October of 2015, The Last Kingdom has gone on to become one of the most popular shows in the history of BBC Two, focusing solely on the journey of Uhtred of Bebbanburg. And with an incredible selection of cast members along with a plot based on the popular novels of Bernard Cornwell, it goes without saying that Season 5 of the franchise is one of the most anticipated releases of the coming days. But what does The Last Kingdom really look like behind the scenes? And what filming magic do the showrunners make use of to convince us of the realism of the series? Well, whether you're a fan of the Saxon stories or just want to know more about the popular franchise adapted from these incredible works of historical fiction, stay right where you are as we're about to take a look behind the curtain of The Last Kingdom. So strap yourselves in and get ready for an informative ride as things are about to get interesting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. Number 1. The set of The Last Kingdom. For those of you who haven't taken the leap just yet, The Last Kingdom revolves around the early history of England where the nation was nothing more than a collection of kingdoms. After being invaded by the Danes from across the sea, who the majority of you will know as the Vikings, the land finds itself in a bit of a strange situation. With some sections conquered by the Danes and others by the Saxons, a power struggle emerges, causing kingdoms to choose their sides and launch all-out wars against one another. This brings us to the lead of the franchise, Uhtred of Bebbanburg, who was actually born a Saxon but raised a Dane in an extraordinary turn of events. But we believe it's important to inform you all that as much as The Last Kingdom is based on historical events, this doesn't change the fact that the majority of the storytelling is fictional by nature. And who would have known it, but the same can be said about the actual set of the show. You see, although the show is based on English history, set designers found an incredible location in Hungary that would be perfect for the portrayal of medieval England. According to executive producer Nigel Merchant, Hungary was perfect for this portrayal due to the fact that it made both the cast and audience feel as if they'd been transported into a new world. Nobody really knows what 9th century England looked like. After all, with original descriptions and relics of the time recounting a livelihood that is incredibly similar to the rural areas of Hungary. As such, showrunners thought it would be a great idea to shoot there rather than in the familiar English countryside, which would have ruined the realism of the franchise when recognized by eagle-eyed fans. The city of Winchester, as a point of reference, was actually nothing more than an elaborate set built into the grounds just west of Budapest. It's crazy to think that this town was built from the ground up, taking almost half a year to get itself into a camera-ready state. But this shows the lengths that the showrunners were willing to go to in an attempt to grab the attention of the audience. While the settlements just outside of the city were made of wood, townhouses were made of brick and mortar, giving a rustic feel to something that was incredibly royal at the time. The same can be said about the various castle walls, which were on many occasions built to the standards requested by the producers of the show. Suffice it to say, a lot of time and money were spent on this set. And this wasn't the only set the designers of the show battled with. Bebbanburg as a town was incredibly important to the routine of the third season, being the land that was unjustly taken by Uhtred a couple of seasons ago. Unsurprisingly, this town was another elaborate set that was built by the production crew early in season 1 of the franchise. The only problem is that nobody at the time really knew that it was going to have such a large impact in season 3. So when season 2 came to an end, it was essentially broken down for parts. This meant that the production crew had to then spend a lot of time and money recreating the set for season 3 so that it had the same feel as it did in the previous seasons. Better yet, they decided to then amend the set by making it feel almost weathered, giving the impression of the passing of time. And finally, some changes were made to the overall layout to convince the audience that the new rulers of the land had developed it over the years. So when Uhtred came to see Bebbanburg once more after all those years, Alexander Dreymon was able to use his own emotional response to the new set as a guide for how Uhtred would have felt. So much effort for just a small ounce of realism. It just makes us respect the show even more. Number 2. The shooting style of the show. What makes the show so popular among fans actually has a lot to do with its shooting style. When it came to the filming of the first season, director Peter Hoare said that he envisioned the creation of a world that the audience could feel a part of. And while this served as the precursor for the impressive set design of the franchise, it also gave the collection of directors a broad plan for the future. Rather than filming The Last Kingdom as events that had taken place in the past, they decided to use a combination of spherical positions and handheld shooting to make it feel as if the audience was actually a part of the scene being shot. The cinematographer of the show, Tim Palmer, has a pretty impressive track record when it comes to filming, so we really shouldn't be surprised at how great the end product turned out. The Road to Coronation Street is a great example of what he's done in the past and shares a very similar shooting style to what we see in The Last Kingdom. And since it's only with the combination of incredible set design and dynamic filming that the franchise was able to reach the heights that it did, the executive producers must be commended for the members of the production team that they decided to hire. Without them, the titular cast members would have never been able to give the amazing performance that they have for the last 4 seasons. Dreymon Dreymon himself commented on this in an interview, stating that he would never have been able to give as great a performance as he did as Uhtred if he hadn't been convinced that he was actually living in early England. So well done, showrunners, for making all the right decisions. Number 3. The challenge of shooting outside. Since the overarching plot surrounds the retaking of land, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's quite a lot of action sprawled over the last 4 seasons of The Last Kingdom. And since the majority of large-scale battles have to take place outside, this resulted in quite a bit of difficulty when it came to actually shooting these scenes. Remember, the sets in question were all based in Hungary, with some even being moved to just outside of Budapest. And for those of you who don't know, Hungary can be quite a miserable place as far as the weather is concerned. This meant that more often than not, the cast and crew had to work in the worst conditions, ranging from rain to snowstorms. And while this worked out when extreme weather was meant for a specific scene, the same cannot be said for others. This is why the production crew had to use quite a few editing tricks and visual effects to delete pesky weather when it was not needed in a specific scene. This was only when a scene had to be shot on a specific day to keep to the schedule of the show. The majority of the time, cast members would be huddled up in their tents awaiting a break in the rainfall so that they could quickly rush outside once more and attempt to film a scene that required a clear sky. According to Eliza Butterworth, who plays the role of Aelswith on the show, this was absolute hell, but definitely worth it at the end of the day. Another great aspect of outside filming had to do with the use of drones by the production crew. This allowed for incredible chase scenes where, in the past, rails would have been built to get the same angle. Drones were also used quite often to get the large, sprawling shots of towns and battlefields, which was preferred over the virtual remodeling of the practical sets by the visual effects team. Although this would have certainly been easier, the show saved a massive amount of its budget by using drones in this manner, and once more gave rise to more realism by filming in this way. If you're using practical effects from the start, why not show them off after all? Number 4. The visual effects department. That being said, this couldn't always be the case. When it comes to filming, a certain process has to be followed. There needs to be a certain amount of organization involved, but a director needs to be flexible in an attempt to allow the story to take the audience on a journey. This is why this overall plan in place sometimes needs to change, causing the cast to reenact a scene with the wrong background in place. A great example of this can be seen in the instance where prisoners are being taken in a cart to Wessex. Rather than actually having Wessex in the background, the scene was littered with green scenes that were then used by the visual effects department to superimpose a model of Wessex into the frame. This made it seem as if the cart was moving towards the city, where in actual fact the set was a few kilometers away from the actors at the time. What do you think of this behind-the-scenes moments of The Last Kingdom though? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.